Hello. On behalf of the American Federation of Teachers, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar on how to survive and thrive as a new teacher. My name is Robin Vitucci, and I'm a Senior Associate at the American Federation of Teachers, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter, Julia Thompson. You can read her bio on the right side of your screen. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome, Julia.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. All right, guys, let's get started. Our topic today is how to survive and thrive as a new teacher. And let me just introduce myself to you just a little bit. Until recently, I was a classroom teacher. I just recently retired after teaching 40 years. And I will tell you honestly that not a day went by in those 40 years that a student did not make me smile. And so as we go through this, you know, I am a teacher who has been in the same situation you're in, and I've had good days and bad days, and I figured out lots of ways to make it work, and that's what I want to share with you today. All right, here's our presentation outline, what we're going to cover. There'll be a brief outline, and then I want to talk to you about the best ways to begin a school term, how to maintain that important balance between your personal and professional lives, and how to develop the skills and attitudes necessary to become a professional educator, and some next steps that you can take between now and the time you start school. So as an introduction today, I know a lot of you are first-year teachers, and that's just incredibly impressive to me that so many of you would want to join us. I mean, you were really on the ball if you were already figuring out how to do professional development online. So your first year is the most unforgettable year you will ever have as a teacher, I predict. It certainly was for me. You will have a very intense experience throughout the year, especially your first semester. There will be a lot of ups, a lot of things that you just glory in your successes, but there will be a lot of downs as well. And that's because everything is uncertain and everything is new, and there's lots of people who will help you. Another thing I want you to know about your first year is, and this is hard to say, but it's going to happen, you will make mistakes this year. You will make a lot of mistakes this year, and that is perfectly okay. Nobody expects you to have all the information you need and to make a perfect day every day. That's just not going to happen. And if you're going to make a mistake, learn from it. That's just as we expect our students to have a growth mindset, we expect ourselves to have a growth mindset. So you will learn from your mistakes. And that's a pretty powerful way to start your career, knowing that, hey, if I mess up, I'll learn from it and move on. And a third thing I'd like you to know about your first year as a teacher is that don't hesitate to ask for help. Lots of times, new teachers are intimidated by other teachers, they seemingly know what they're doing, or they have that aura of confidence and competence that, you know, if you're a new teacher, you don't always have. But you know what? Ask for help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help, and ask a variety of people for help. Ask your students for help. Ask their parents for help and their guardians, and ask your colleagues and your administrators. Don't hesitate to ask for help, because you know what? Everything you do matters. This is one of the most thrilling parts about our profession, is that it is so important. You have a chance to make a huge difference in the world of a child. No matter how old that child is, what you do matters. You're going to change that child's world. So remember, it's an intense year. You're going to make mistakes, and don't hesitate to ask for help. Those are the hallmarks. Asking for help is a hallmark of a true professional. All right, so let me ask you this. What is your involvement in education? So we have several choices here, as you can see. So if you would go ahead and click and submit, I'm so curious to see who's with us. Look and see the results. Elementary and high school. Oh, and others. Excellent. Thank you guys for doing that. So I have one more poll question for you. What is your level of teaching experience? Are you pre-service? Is this going to be your first year? Are you 2 to 5 years, 6 to 10, or more than 11? And let's see who's here. Thank you again for doing that. All right. Lots of 2 to 5 and 11 plus. Oh, 50-50, that's really cool. What a neat division. All right, everybody, thank you so much for your cooperation with that. So let's go to our first big topic, which is how to have a great start of the school year. Now, since you tend to be experienced teachers, you know that it's important to get the school year off to a good start. And you can do that with just a bit of planning, effort, and confidence. And the way to be a confident teacher is to be prepared. You cannot wing school. You just can't. You have to be prepared for school. You have to be prepared for class every day. And as a new teacher, you may not realize that. You may think, oh, because it looks easy until you actually do it. So that confidence is important. So be prepared, plan, put in the effort, and you're going to get off to a good start. As we all know, first day jitters are normal. Honestly, for 40 years, I had stage fright. The first day of school, I was just a nervous wreck until I got there and I saw that the kids were actually adorable, darling people, and they weren't going to misbehave. But I was terrible about having those teacher dreams when nobody behaved well before school. So in the first year jitters, you need to boost your confidence the first day of school by dressing, first day jitters, by dressing well. Even those teachers who traditionally slouched around in jeans before school, when you're setting up your classroom and things like that, you do need to dress up a bit on the first day of school. That's important because it sends a positive message to your students that you are prepared, that you honor them, that you honor the occasion. Another thing that I found helped me and my colleagues with the first day of school jitters was to ride to work together. If you ride to work with a colleague, it helps you if you carpool, because then you can provide mutual support for each other and you can share your concerns and your fears. And the last one I have here for this is to pack up your book bag the night before and leave it by the door so you can just grab it as you leave. So have your lunch packed, have everything ready, all your clothes laid out, be ready to go. So all you do in the morning is just get up, shower, dress, go. And keep in mind that you're not alone. Everybody is stressed on the first day of school. Another thing I have here is to look over the list of your students' names one last time before school starts. You'll feel better if you can pronounce your students' names correctly. As you may have experienced, definitely if you were a student, you saw it happen when you were a student. If you mispronounce a student's name on the first day of school, there tends to be, if it's a name that has been mispronounced a lot in the past, students tend to overreact to that. So try your best to get student names as correct as possible. And so what I used to do would be to, I'd go around the room and ask every student to say his or her name into my phone, and I'd record it. And now I'd go home and play them back, and that would make a difference for me if I had trouble with names on the first day. And then in red, because this is absolutely crucial, plan more work than you believe your students can possibly ever accomplish. And then you need to plan some more. You need way more extra work than you think you need on the first day of school. And, if you are, any level of experience, you're going to need more work than you think you need on the first day of school because you don't know your students and you can't really pace your work. It is truly terrifying to run out of work for your students on the first day of school. So I have six quick little activities for students just to kind of keep in mind you may want to do on the first day. The first one at the end of class, if you're looking at the clock and you've got 10 minutes left to go, you can ask them to list what they've learned. And if they can't write yet, they can call it out to you. And when they call it out to you, then you write it on the board or they share it. They share it with a partner, they share it with a group, and then they share it with a large group if you want to do that. You can also have a time capsule. I love to do this with students. I pass out index cards or little scraps of paper on the first day of school and have them put their name on one side, and on the other side, I'd have them write a prediction about what the year is going to be like, or maybe a brief sentence or two about what the first day was like for them. And when I gather them together and I put them in a box, and toward the end of the year, we open them and go over them together and to see if their predictions were correct or if their attitudes had changed. Another thing to do on the first day of school that really works well for students is to tell you 3 reasons why they're going to have a good year. And, this can be used at any level, and they can write it down first if they can write, if they're old enough to write, or they can just call it out and you collect them. They can do them on sticky notes. There's all kinds of ways to do that. Another activity that is really popular now that is just a really wonderful activity is what I wish my teacher knew. And so there is an activity where you could ask students to tell you what they wish you knew about them. So if you know that, you may run out of time. You could say, tell me something I really need to know to be a good teacher for you. You can actually teach, and I like to teach on the first day of school. You can teach 3 facts about the upcoming lesson, or maybe 3 vocabulary terms, or teach them 3 skills they need to know really fast, but keep it brief and simple so that when they go home and their parents say, what did you learn today, they really have something to say. And number 6, the final activity that you can do that is a really positive thing to do is ask students to brainstorm ways to succeed in school. And on the first day, they've kind of forgotten their school skills if they're older students, like maybe 2nd grade on up. But, what can you do to succeed in school? What tasks do you need to do? What skills do you need to have? And that I've found has really been a positive thing for kids. I also have, under that big one right there, is have extra supplies on hand so that every student can complete assignments with no trouble. The kids don't go out by themselves unless they're older kids and buy their own school supplies, and you don't know why they don't have school supplies. So I'd always have pencils ready for them on the first day, and I'd hand out paper and pencils. I'd have a folder for kids in case they needed a folder to take their work home. I liked a welcoming packet. If you go to Share My Lesson homepage and then go to Top Resources, and then from Top Resources, click on SML Blogs, I have a blog post about how to make a welcoming packet for students, and I've adjusted it for different grade levels that may help you, or age levels of students. So have those extra supplies on hand. I also believe it's important to arrive early. You don't have to be so early that you help the custodians get the building ready and locked, but you should be early enough that you don't feel rushed in finishing any last-minute chores. You want to be able to get to school calm, ready to go, nicely dressed. Oh my gosh, and don't forget, wear comfortable shoes, because of all the days of the year, you will never have a chance to sit on the first day. So you're ready to go on the first day of school. All right? I think it's important, too, to get everyone settled into a classroom as quickly as possible. And, of course, I think it's common practice that we all stand at the door and greet our students when they come to us. When students come to us, we stand there, we look happy, we look welcoming, we have a big name tag on, the room number is big, so kids know that they're in the right place. So here's how I suggest this is a really workable way to do the first day of school. So if you look at the picture I have here with the slide, the image on the slide, the desks are in traditional rows. I do love group work. I do love the flexible classrooms, but at the beginning of the flexible classroom seating, but at the beginning of the school year, it's important that kids learn to focus on the teacher. So arrange the desk in your classroom in a configuration that you would like them to remain for the first few days of class. And this gets students, 1, focused on you, and 2, allows you to really learn their names and who they are and watch how they interact with each other. So I tended to keep students in traditional rows, or at least more traditional configurations at the beginning of the year. For step 2, I would number each desk. Now you can take say a piece of painter's tape and put it at the top of the desk and put a number on it, or use an easy to read label on the top corner of the desk, on the back of a chair. Or you could even write with a dry erase marker. You could even write on the desk itself if it's the type of surface that can do that and sustain that. If you write the number on the label instead of typing it, be sure to use a pen that doesn't smear. So during the day, go through the desk and check to make sure those numbers are still there. So you number the desk. Then you print out a roster of your students' names, and sometimes you just don't want to use an alphabetical roster. So use that roster to type up a personalized one. So you get your roster ready. Go through any information you have about students who need accommodations. So that would be students with preferential seating, or students who have hearing issues or vision issues, or whatever. And make sure you take those into consideration when you assign seats on the first day. You definitely want to assign seats on the first day, because your goal is to reduce commotion and confusion as quickly as possible. For step 5, after you've decided where every student is going to sit, on your roster, put the number of the assigned desk next to the student's name on the roster. And so what happens then is you have them placed in a seating chart, and you have them placed on the roster with a number. For step 6 of this, get everybody in, get them seated right away. Go ahead and meet them at the door, and as they file in the room, if they're old enough to identify their name on a roster, what you want to do is find their name and their seat number and tell them to go directly to their seats. So they should walk to the desk without any hesitation. You want to avoid having students wandering around the room or students who are, off task. So you want to get them quickly to their seats. Something I used to do that I forgot about when I made this slide that was really neat. I used to print out a name tag for my students. I put their name on a brightly colored piece of paper and their desk number. So they would walk past me, greet me, say their name, I check it off their roster, and then they would go pick up their name with the number of their desk on the name tag, and they would wear it. And then in class, they would give it back to me. So that's another way to get students quickly in their seats so you don't have a lot of confusion and trouble at the beginning of the year. All right, 5 easy ways to have a successful first day. The first one is to play music as soon as students enter the room. I like to use instrumental music. I like to use classical music, Baroque music. I like it at a low tone. It's friendly, it's pleasant. Pandora Internet Radio is perfect for this. There's lots of really good stations out there. I would tend to go with instrumental music because the words tend to distract students. So keep that low key like that. That's a pleasant way to start the day. Another one is to make sure, like I just said, every student is quickly seated in the right spot with as little confusion as possible. And then when students enter the room, have an interesting activity for them to do right away. They come in, they go straight to their seat, they open a folder if you use a welcoming packet, or they have an activity right there at their desk, a puzzle, a form, a manipulative, something they do right away. So they are not just sitting there waiting for you to start class. And I also think that on the first day of school, it's important for students to get to know the names of several of their classmates by the end of class. So I think that's important too, because it sends a message that, they're part of a team. I also think that having students interact with their classmates on the first day sends a really positive message about the importance of teamwork in your class and how you want things to be done. So if you need transitions between activities, because on the first day we tend to have lots of little activities for students to do, consider showing a motivational or intriguing PowerPoint or movie clip. So I have 3 suggestions here for you. One is one that a lot of people use, and it just does not get old, and that's Kid President. So if you type in Kid President, Google that in, there's all kinds of terrific, inspiring, uplifting little clips from him. You can also Google brain break as a search term. And there's all kinds of activities now for kids to get up and move and wiggle a little bit and go back to their seats. And another one, especially for younger students, would be the site gonoodle.com, where students get up and move and sit back down. All of those Kid President, Googling brain break, and Go Noodle are really positive ways to have transitions between activities for your students. I also think, number 7, talk to your students about how you're nervous and how you predict that they are as well, and discuss your shared anxiety. Because, that is the elephant in the room. They are terrified of school. They are terrified of you. They're terrified they won't be in a class where anybody is nice to them. And so you want to talk about that and get that out there where everybody can enjoy the first day of school. If you have students who are going to be moving to other classrooms, this happens across grade levels, make sure everybody knows where to go. If you teach younger students, it's really nice because you tend to walk them as a group places, but sometimes they don't go with the group. Or if you teach older kids, they don't know where to go. So definitely make sure everybody knows what they're supposed to do, because it is just mortifying to be lost on the first day of school. I think it's important that teachers wear a name tag. Teachers wear name tags. And if it's appropriate, like I just said about the desk number on there, ask your students to wear name tags as well for at least part of the class. I would not give them anything with a sharp point on it, like a pen to pin to the shirt. Maybe a little painter's tape to keep it up on their shoulder. That may work, something light like that. But I think it's important for you to wear a name tag, definitely. Ask for their advice in solving a classroom problem, such as how to store materials or remember the schedule for the next day. this does serves two really good purposes. One, it serves the purpose of the fact that they really have good ideas, and they have ideas that we don't tend to think of. And the other is it gets student buy-in, and we definitely want them to contribute to the class and to feel ownership and what happens there. Number 11, make sure you are organized and prepared for class so that you can focus on helping the students. I had this in the first day, but that's every day. If you are organized, if you're prepared for class, then you don't have to be worried about the fact that nobody has the handouts they need, or you need to really leave the room, or whatever. Instead, you can focus on what's most important, and that's the students right in front of you. Also, if students are new to the school, like maybe they've moved to your area, you want to assign buddies to students who may be new to the school. And, it may be that you want to assign just buddies in general so that students can help each other out. Depends on your students, depends on your school situation. All right. If students do not have school supplies, lend them what they need without fuss. Honestly, I said this earlier today, and just send them a pencil. That's, to me, is important. Just give them a pencil and a paper. On the first day, they may not be prepared for school. And that doesn't matter how old they are. They just don't tend to have the supplies on the first day. Number 14, if students have a written assignment, provide the paper for that written assignment. Don't expect them to have paper the first day of school. And keep in mind that students like to write on things that are not lined paper. So if it's a sticky note, an index card, a scrap of paper, a sticky note cut in half, odd shapes and colors, they're always more fun for students to write on than traditional lined paper. And that's just a neat, fun thing to do on the first day. And then compliment the group throughout class, and especially toward the end of the period or the day. I don't tend to believe that we need to just beat students to death to teach them the rules on the first day of school. Rules come maybe the second or third day of school, and definitely you need rules and you need to teach them. But on the first day, I always tended to teach procedures, and I would do it indirectly. Like if they had papers out and I needed to collect them, I'd say, okay, here's how I want you to pass your papers to me. And I'd praise them, praise them, praise them. That's the way we do it in here. That's the procedure for passing papers. So I do it indirectly. And it's gentle, it's pleasant. They want to come back. They see themselves as part of a group. But if you just come in and hammer them the first day of school with rules, then you get students who are not as enthusiastic about coming back as you would like them to be. Here's a bonus. Your students will arrive worried about the year ahead, and your goal is to have them leave looking forward to the time they're going to spend with you. All right, our next big category, work and life balance. And those of you who are experienced teachers know it's really hard to do. It requires a daily attention. Now, in the handout that you get with this webinar, my publisher was extremely generous in allowing me to give out the first chapter of my book, my new book on first-year teacher survival guide. And in that first chapter, I have a whole section on work-life balance. And so I'm really pleased that that is in there. So I'm skimming it over right now, but there'll be a lot of that in the handout that you have. So you know this is important. So here's how you maintain balance in your life. Everyone benefits when you delegate responsibilities. Even very young students can help you a lot in class. Decide who you want to do a task, clearly explain how you want it accomplished, and then step back and allow the people you selected to just get busy with their jobs. For example, I don't think teachers need to clean up the room at the end of a class. Students need to do that. They made the mess, they clean up the mess. It teaches them responsibility. Also, for maintaining balance, plan ahead. When you know that you are approaching a tough time at school, you need to find the opportunities to prevent or solve problems and not just suffer through them. Look for solutions. Spend your day looking for solutions and don't just complain. For example, a lot of teachers, it always happened to me, but it happens when I work with teachers around the country, complain about students coming back after lunch. So instead of saying, oh my gosh, I have a terrible class after lunch, these students won't do anything I ask, really look at it. Is it a whole class out of control, or is it maybe 5 students who need to be taught how to settle down, calm down, and then move on? And so then if you look at it like that, you can really prevent or solve your problems. So plan ahead. Refuse to take disrespect personally. That's hard to do. If you invested a lot of yourself in a student and that child is being disrespectful to you, that's hard to take, to not take it personally. But you know what? They don't know you as a person. And that's really important to keep in mind. They know your teacher self. They don't know the real you. Leave your problems at school, but take your successes home. So I think it's important to use your time going to and from work to turn into your professional self and your personal self. But when you go home, if something bad has happened, make yourself not think about it till the next day. And then place great value on your personal time. Working long hours every day is a sure path to burnout. You need time just to be yourself. School's always going to be there. But you have to, especially after the first, say, 3 weeks. Because it's hard, as you know, the first 3 weeks are time-consuming at school. But after that, really start saying, I need time to myself. I need time to think. I need time to do things. When you find yourself trying to control everything, just stop. You know, lots of times teachers are very successful students, but when you get to be a teacher, you have to really pick your battles. For example, I mentioned earlier on the first day of school, handout pencils. I was a teacher who walked down the hall picking up the broken pencils, and I would give my students didn't have a pencil, and a lot of them didn't. I would just go ahead and give them a broken pencil. Pick your battles. I never wanted to fight the broken pencil, fight the no pencil battle. So go ahead and figure out what's important to you, but you can't control everything. Students should do more work than you do. Plan the times when you don't have to be on. Take a second to catch your breath. You know, do independent work. Do small group work. Show a small video clip. You don't want to waste your time in class showing full-on videos, but take a minute during the day where you can just take a breath and you're not standing in front of a group trying to cajole a class into listening. And remember that work-life balance does not happen by accident. Make a conscious decision to manage your stress and to maximize how you use the time that you're at school so your home life can be as rewarding as your school life. And this one gets a slide out to itself. We keep your life in perspective, and you learn that perspective. Remember that today's problems probably won't matter a year from now or even next week. If you're a first-year teacher, you don't realize that. But as you gain experience, then you do know things will fall into place. Make that effort. I think it's also important to remember that you're not alone. What I have here is a picture of my classroom one year when I took over for a teacher who quit at the end of the first day. The class was that tough. And so I took over her class for her. It was a tough class, a group of classes, to put it mildly. And the arrow points to my desk. And on my desk, I'm an experienced teacher. I had just been a teacher of the year in my county the year before. On my desk is a picture of my house. So that when I was having a really stressful moment with students, I'd look at my house and think, well, somebody's got to make a house payment. And so I'm not going to quit. There's plenty of teachers in the world, more than 3 million, and we're all together in this. Everybody has discipline issues. All right, and bad days and good days. Our last category, taking a proactive approach to your own professional growth will quickly reward your efforts. So, as you go through your teacher training, it's really cool because when you're in college, your professors, your advisors tell you what to take and how to be educated. But once you become a teacher, you determine the type of teacher you're going to be. You determine the level of excellence that you're going to have. And so you need to start, even as a first year, working on self-directed, sustained professional growth. And you do this by seeking opportunities to improve your skills, to increase your knowledge, and to take responsibility for your growth. Now, nobody's going to expect a first-year teacher during the first semester to sign up for a college course, college-level course. That's not going to happen. But if you make that daily effort to learn something, then you will be getting ahead in your professional growth. So here's how to take charge of your professional growth. Join a professional organization. It's really encouraging to me to see so many of you here on a professional site. Read professional literature. Explore educational websites. Now, in the handout that goes along with this webinar today, I've listed organizations, professional literature that I suggest for you, and really terrific educational websites for you. Set up your own PLN. That's a personal learning network. And usually those are associated with social media sites like Twitter. But you know, you could have your own PLN at your school. You could have, if you work on a team, you guys can read books together and you could talk about things together. You can do action research together. You can also take learning walks and do snapshot observations. So a learning walk is when you and a colleague visit another teacher's class. And of course, you get permission in advance. And you stay a few minutes, and then when you leave, you and your colleague discuss what you saw. And so that is really a positive thing to do. So you can do, you can work with a colleague, maybe your mentor. You can do it with another first-year teacher. You can do it with an administrator, just another teacher in the building. But when you visit another classroom together and then you share your observations, you really learn a lot. And another way I think that is really a positive way to take charge of your professional growth is to do snapshot observations. So there's two ways to do this. You just make arrangements with a teacher and you ask to be in that person's classroom for about 10 minutes. You sit in the back unobtrusively and take notes, and then you go back and filter throughout and process what you saw. Or you can ask people, and this is hard to do if you're a first-year teacher because you're not very confident yet, ask people to come in and observe you. The more people that observe you, the better, because then it takes all the burden out. You're used to having people in and out of your classroom. Ask people to come in and do a snapshot observation of you and to make suggestions about how you can improve and what you're doing well. And finally, and probably this is the most important, systematically reflect on your performance. And by systematically, I don't mean just periodically. I mean every day you should reflect on your performance. Now, there's all kinds of ways to do that. You can go ahead and keep a journal where you actually write in it. You can keep that electronically. You can keep a hand journal. It's up to you. You could, my last year of a teacher, of teaching, I recorded on my phone, and then when I'd get home, I'd take the highlights. So I would make lengthy recordings, but then I'd go home and I'd filter it out and write it. So there's all kinds of ways to do it, you know, electronically, on paper, to do it, do an audio recording, or whatever you do. Reflecting on your performance, having a reflective practice needs to happen every day. So I think there's 4 really important things to help you focus as you develop your skills. The first one is when you are at school, be fully present. Be deliberate about learning new techniques and strategies. Be as positive as you can to be at school, to be mindful of what you're doing at school. So when you are fully present at school, I used to say, give 110%. So I would put my cell phone away, except unless I'm using it as a timer in class or something like that. But I would not engage in personal email at school. I would super plan my plan period. I knew exactly what I was doing during my plan period, because otherwise, if I didn't, I'd be sitting in the lounge eating M&Ms and visiting with people. So at school, be fully present, especially when you're in your classroom with your students, because when you're in class, those students need to have you really focused on them. And they need to know that you are there. And so at school, be fully present and be deliberate about learning new techniques and strategies. Kind of, look at your reflection and say, well, I didn't handle the way I gave a test this week. So next week, what I want to do is work on learning new techniques. I'll ask some other teachers about how they do tests and how they assign work in advance of a test. Things like that. Number 2, and this is hard if you're a first-year teacher, because I think this is probably the most frightening part of school for many first-year teachers, is classroom management. So have classroom management structures in place so that students are confident about the expectations that you have for the mastery of material, social interactions, and self-regulated behaviors. So if you have those classroom management structures in place as quickly as you can, then you have more time freed up for instruction and for connecting and building those relationships that you want with your students and for your students to have with each other. And of course, classroom management structures are rules, policies, and procedures. So figure those out before school starts, or as that first week before the first day of school, as you work with your mentor and the other people in your school, and then go ahead and get those in place as quickly as you can. It takes a long time to figure out how you want your classroom to run. But definitely you want to do that. I also think another way to develop your skills as a professional educator is to use current research findings and best practices to inform instructional decisions. As a first-year teacher, you automatically have a big advantage over veteran teachers because you've just been exposed to, in your training, you've just been exposed to the latest trends, the latest, newest work that other people have done. So you've just been taught that. So research. And then don't stop. Do your own research. Do your own working with other teachers around you. Pay attention to the educational trends online and best practices. For example, right now, a big hot button is the no-zero policy. It wouldn't hurt you to review that before school started so you have a firm idea about how you're going to handle it and how your mindset's going to be and how your district handles it or your school handles it. And then the last one I have here is to seek a variety of mentors. I hope that every new teacher in the world is given a mentor, and that mentor will help that teacher. But you know, there's all kinds of levels of mentorship and all kinds of people who are willing to be a mentor. And so, for example, if you know that somebody in your school is really good at working with parents and guardians of students, then you may want to go talk to them, that person, about how they do that, how they accomplish that. Or if you walk past somebody's classroom and it's like super neat at the end of the day and your classroom isn't as neat as you want it to be, stop and ask them how they did it. So interact with a variety of other staff members to enhance your skills and your knowledge. You don't have to rely on just one mentor. Just constantly set goals for yourself and seek to improve. Hang on a second. Let me get a drink of water. I never talked much as a teacher, so it's hard for me to talk sometimes for a long time. Anyway, so I think it's important for everyone to let a professional attitude be your hallmark. You want to be known as a professional educator. Systematically reflect on your teaching performance. Learn from your colleagues near and far. 2 things we've covered already. Be prepared for school every day. 3 things we've covered already. But this next one, let your enthusiasm show. Goodness, you chose education. Be enthusiastic about it. Be enthusiastic about your school, your subject matter, about the activities your students are going to do. But most of all, be enthusiastic and let it show about your students. Let them feel your approval. Let them feel your affection. And you know who needs that the most? Your most challenging students. They need to know that you just think the world of them. Maybe not of their behavior, but you think the world of them. So let that enthusiasm just shine. And then you know what? That makes everybody around you glad to be with you. You want to project competence. Now, as a first-year teacher, you may be saying, but wait, you just said to ask for help whenever I need it. Well, that's true. But you know what? You have competencies as a first-year teacher that experienced teachers don't have. Like I said, you know, you have recent training. In a meeting, for example, if you want to appear competent, sit in a meeting, a faculty meeting, and people around you are grading papers, not you. You're sitting there taking notes, looking intent. You show up at school every day on time. If you have a lunch duty, you're on time to your lunch duty. So just be as competent as you can. There's nothing wrong with asking questions. You absolutely should do that. But project the idea that you know what you're doing and make that happen. And that's the same with confidence. Nobody wants to babysit another teacher. You know, we want to help you, but if you constantly are upset and nervous about things, that's pretty bad. So be confident. And you know who needs your confidence the most? Your students. You are leading that class, so let that show. You want to be courteous to everyone. And that's one of the reasons for that is because life is better when we treat each other with courtesy, but also you're the role model for courtesy. Please and thank you should come out of your mouth when you're with your students about 100 times a day. And the last one there is you want to project seriousness. You want your students, when you go to the front of the room and you stand there, you grab their attention and you say, may I have your attention, please? You're on teacher mode. You want them to know that what the business of your classroom is important, that you have their welfare at heart, and that is serious business. So it's perfectly okay to enjoy your students, to play with them, to have fun with them. But when it's time to be serious, you definitely want to project that. And you want your colleagues to see that you are serious about being a teacher. You should also stay calm and work to develop a view of the big picture. Often, when things go wrong in a classroom, say a student has really been sassy to you and you have to send the student to an administrator. You've done all the steps you're supposed to do and you have to send the student out. And then the administrator turns around and sends the student right back to you. Well, you know, that can be discouraging if you allow it to be. But if you see yourself as part of the big picture of that learning community, it may not be. It may be that the administrator is going to do something else. The administrator talked to the students, felt good about it, knows what's going on, and is comfortable sending the student back to you. So work as hard as you can to see yourself as a small part of a big learning community. All right? So we've covered a few ideas about the first day of school. We've covered how to keep life and work in balance. And we've covered how to be a professional, to work as hard as you can to be a professional. So let's talk about how you can use this information right away. So the first way you can do that is to look over the document that comes with this webinar, because it's several pages, and I do include in there not the first day of school stuff, but in that first chapter you'll find stress management, stress reduction, and you'll find how to be a professional. You also, I think, another good thing to do right away would be to get your first day of school plans figured out, actually your first week of school plans figured out, and anything extra you're going to do with students, have those already prepared, ready to go. The more you can do in advance, the better. I also suggest to every teacher, not just new teachers, that you get yourself organized at home. So, you know, have meals made up in advance and put in the freezer. Go ahead and get your do your laundry, get your clothes ready to go. Get your children, if you have children at home, get them situated. Do everything you can so that during those crucial, especially the first 3 weeks of school seem to be really intense times for teachers. Do what you can at home to be organized so you can really manage your life and work pretty easily then. Also, if it's at all possible for you, join a professional organization before school starts. And if you can't join a professional organization because you don't have a paycheck yet, which is perfectly reasonable, then go ahead and start hitting those educational websites that I've put in your document for you. And the last one is figure out how to manage your stress. Alcohol and chocolate are not good stress management. They just are not going to work for you in the long run. So in that document I have for you, I have lots of different ways to manage your stress while you are at school. So go ahead and figure out what's going to work for you. Anticipate the fact that you're going to be tired and that you need to figure out how to deal with stress. And remember, as you work on through getting everything ready for your first year, to take it easy. Have realistic expectations for yourself. Small, strategic steps are what really work. And so easy does it. Take it sensibly. Work hard. But you know what? It's going to pay off in the end. Just keep it easy. Be realistic about what you can do. Small strategic steps are the way to go. All right, everybody. Here is the last slide. I want to make sure that everyone has the correct email address for me, because for some reason, I gave an old address. So it's, please feel free to contact me. It's Thompson, THOMPSON, teacher advice, all three words together, Thompson teacher advice @gmail.com. So it's Thompson teacher advice @gmail.com. And if you're not sure about that, just go to my website, juliagthompson.com. It's right there, and click on contact, and you can contact me that way. Or you can go to on Twitter if you have a Twitter account, or you can go contact me through the blog. So, but it's Thompson teacher advice @gmail.com.
Great. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. And I put the email address in the chat box, so if you scroll up and you can find it there if you weren't able to write it down. Right now we're going to do some questions and answers. Oh, yeah, no problem. We're going to do some questions and answers. So if you go to the Q&A widget and you have a question, you can type that in, and we'll get to it if we have time. We have about 8 minutes left. So I'm going to ask the first question, which was submitted by Samantha from Rangeview Elementary School. And she asks, what kinds of activities have you used in the past for the first day? Activities that still set expectations for work while building classroom culture and relationships.
I like to have students work together as teams. And so on the first day, I like to do, it depends on your content area, I like to be content oriented on the first day. So I would do things like share pair activities where two students work together and then they share with the people around them and they share with the whole group. So think about things in your content, maybe an intro, maybe things that can activate prior knowledge that they may have about the information. So if you do share pair or small group activities, or if you can have them respond to true-false questions or questions that are absolutely right or absolutely wrong, you can have them discuss those together and then report back to the group. You could do jigsaws on the first day. It depends on the level of students, the grade, if their ability to read on the first day. But whatever you do, you are right. It does, that's a really good point you made. It does need to promote classroom culture, and it does need to promote a solid, positive feel to the day.
Great, thank you. And the next question is, what is the key to consistency?
It is really hard to be consistent. That's one of the hardest things that teachers find, no matter who I talk to. We all struggle with being a consistent teacher because in our hearts, teachers are so kind-hearted. We want to be as good as we can to everybody, and we feel for our students. But I think the biggest thing is to have the framework in place. Have your policies, your procedures, and your rules in place so that if a child does misbehave, then instead of having to fuss with a child or work with a child in any other way, you just say, what rule have you broken? Why do we have that rule? Okay, let's figure out how to not do that again, and here's your consequence. If it's a rule that, a type of infraction that needs a consequence. So I think letting that framework of boundaries and structures, rules, policies, and procedures in place will definitely make it easy to be consistent.
Great, and that you sort of answered the next question, but the next question was, how do you devise classroom rules? Do you have set rules? Do you include student input? Do you have specific rules for specific classes, et cetera?
So I think that the best practices on rules need to be brief, they need to be easy to remember, they need to be pretty generic. For example, instead of being very detailed about which books you bring on Tuesday and which books you bring to Thursday and what you bring on Wednesday this class, you just need to say the rule needs to be you are prepared, you need to come to class prepared to work. And so that a rule is a general thing. And then you have policies and procedures after that, but the rules need to be as general as possible. I think no more than little kids, the little ones, don't need more than 4 rules. And there would be things like keep your hands to yourself, something like that, honor other people's personal space, or, be kind to everyone around you, hands to yourself kinds of things. Or they need to have, 1, 2, 3, look at me. I know that's a procedure, but that can also be pay attention to the teacher when the teacher's talking. So you have to think about your classroom and what is important to you. And so I wouldn't start with rules the first day, as I've said. I'll kind of get a feel for my students because they may not need some of the rules that you have generically made up. So I think little kids need maybe 4 rules, and older kids, I would think no more than 6, and keep them broad. And then keep them to where, students can identify the reasons for them. There is nothing wrong with having students have input in the rules as long as you are comfortable with what they say. You don't want to have kids create the rules and be the boss of the class that way, because it's your job to lead the class. But you definitely want to take, depending on your students, their view into it.
Great, thank you. The next question is, how do you motivate learners and get their mind ready for schoolwork on the first day?
I think that you want to focus on teaching content the first day. I want you to be as pleasant as possible with them and get them ready to go. And like something as simple as brainstorm ways to succeed in class and what has worked for you in the past. And there's nothing wrong with setting goals. You can set a goal for the year. You can set a goal for a team. You can, get kids focused on the future. Even little kids need to be they need to have a reason for what they're doing. They need to have a really clear idea that they're not just working just to work, but that everything that they do in your class will lead them to something greater. And so everything is a progression. I used to have a set of stair steps in my room on the bulletin board to say, here you are, and at the end of the year, look how far you've come. And so if you can get students to be thinking about something besides just drudging away at work, but there's a purpose for it, then I think you're getting there. So it's fun to tell students, this year, this is what we're going to do in this class, and here's what you're going to have at the end of the year. This is the knowledge you're going to have. That's pretty cool.
Thank you. And we have about a minute left, so I'm going to ask the final question. And real quick, do you have any tips on what you can do on the first day of school if you have to share your classroom with other teachers?
Oh, that's really hard. I've had to do that for years. And you know what? On the first day of school, the one thing you should do, and that is difficult to do depending on the teacher, is ask that teacher to leave the room. And when your students come in, you and that teacher before school starts definitely need to sit down together and work out a few ground rules, because if you don't, then you're going to be invading someone else's space, and that's not okay. But I would definitely sit down with that teacher before school starts and say, listen, here's what I need from you, and how can we work this out? If I'm going to be in this classroom, what are a few ground rules that we have between us that can work things out? And on the first day of school, I would definitely ask the teacher if you could number the desk and give the kids the name tag with the number on it. I think that would help, because then they go straight to the seat. You still have to put kids in assigned seats the first day of school, whether the configuration is the way you want it or not. But sharing a classroom is difficult. There's just, even with the nicest people in the world you're working with, it's still difficult to share that space. And now that schools are so crowded, it happens more and more. So try to figure out ways to make it work.
Well, that's all the time we have. I think we can send these last questions to Julia if she wants to answer them after the webinar.
Certainly,
this was a great
I would be glad to.
Great. And this was a wonderful presentation. And I think people from their first year to their 30th year have gotten some great tips on how to start the year off right. So I want to thank the participants for joining in and all the great feedback and questions. So thank you, Julia, and thank you to the participants.
Thank you.